Alrighty, today we are starting a new topic. We are talking about scatter plots, something that you have not seen before. You have seen it, but maybe you didn't realize what it was. Our goals are I can represent data on a scatter plot, I can use a trend line or a line of best fit on a scatter plot to make predictions. I can describe whether there is a linear, nonlinear, or no association between the data represented on the scatter plot. So all these things we are going to be going over today, and I know that this is going to be a little bit long-winded, so you need to get your best and stay focused and keep up, okay? First thing that we are going to talk about is some vocabulary. So, a scatter plot, it's spelt just like it looks, is a graph that shows a relationship between two sets of data. In other words, number of pets and age of person surveyed is one of the ones we're going to do down here. All right? A correlation is a relationship between these two sets of data. So how do they relate? A trend line, it's also known in algebra as a line of best fit, but for our purposes, you may hear line of best fit in some of the questions, but we call it a trend line, a line that closely fits the data in a scatter plot. And we are going to go over all these things, plus many, many more things that you have not heard before. I hope you know that data points are coordinate points on a graph, okay, that display collected data, all right? So in other words, you have an X and Y value, that's your coordinate points, and they're displayed on a graph to show you how they relate. Here's a couple of examples, okay? We have study time, okay? And here, it's going to be really, really important for you to understand what's happening on these graphs. So you need to read the sides of the graphs, what they're representing, understand what the X values and Y values are. You have test scores here, and this would be your Y axis. And here is time spent studying, and this is your X axis. So to give you an example, if you look at this data, it's going up, isn't it? And what that is saying is that the test, as you spend more time studying, okay, so really X is going up, even though it's going to the side, but it's actually meaning it's going up. As you spend more time studying, the test scores are going up, okay? And so if you learn to identify them this way, then it's easy to make predictions and to answer these questions more effectively. Let's look at this one. It says pet owners. Do you see the difference between the two? This is very linear, and it's going up, it's going up from left to right. Do you remember our lines when we were looking at slope? And they went up from left to right, they were positive. So this would be a positive linear relationship because it's fairly straight, okay? You know, it's not going to be perfect, but it's fairly straight. Whereas this one, your data is kind of like all over the place. Pet owners, it says number of pets they have and age of person surveyed. So I can't say as a person's age gets older or increases, the number of pets increase because it's kind of like it's all over the place. So this is something we would call as no association. It's not linear, and there's really no association between the data. And this is what we use these types of graphs for, to find out is there association and what type of association it is. So let's turn the page. So I kind of gave you a preview of this. It says a relationship is considered to be linear or nonlinear, all right? To determine a correlation, look for the relationship between the sets of data. So we've already talked about this. A relationship has one of three types of correlations: positive correlation, negative correlation, or no correlation, okay? It also can be known as linear or non-linear. And you will see that if it has a positive or negative correlation, it's going to be fairly linear, meaning fairly straight data in one form or another. So let's look at this. Do you see how here your data is kind of, if you kind of drew a line in the middle of it, it's kind of going up, isn't it, from left to right? As one set of values increases, the other set increases. So I could say as my y increases, my x increases. And this is known as positive linear. And it's very linear correlation. Okay? Now here, the data is kind of going down, isn't it? So do you see that your x values, because if this is where your x is, let's just put something 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your x's are still going up, aren't they? So your x's are increasing, but what's happening to your y values? They are going down, aren't they? So that is like a negative slope. We call that a negative correlation. And yes, it is fairly linear. Now, it's not going to be perfect. There's always going to be what we call outliers out here, okay? But for the most part, it's fairly linear. And it's easy to see sometimes if you pull your paper back from you and you kind of look at it from more of a distance than sitting right on top of it, it's easier to see. Is it positive or is it negative? Just kind of like that slope line. It's easier to see. And then we have something called no correlation. The values show no relationship. So it's kind of like just dots all over the place. You really can't make a line out of it in any way, shape, or form. So that's called no correlation. If there is a correlation, we can draw a trend line. That is, it's as close to each data point as possible, has about the same number of points on each side of it, and goes directly through at least two of the points. So this line is known as a trend line. And let's say that this is, I've got dates and I've got numbers, so I could do years here. And by the way, when you have this going on in a graph right here, I'm sorry you couldn't see it, it means that it isn't starting at the beginning. It's kind of like a big gap in between there, okay? And so then we've got here, let's say, time a person can run. Let's say minutes a person can run. So if I was to make up a scenario for this, wouldn't it make sense that your y values or your time would decrease the older you became? Let's say you were born in 1950, all right? As you got older, you would be able to run less time for the most part. Now, there's always that guy that's that athlete out there, I know you'll argue with me, that can run, and he's an old guy, okay? Yeah, that's true, all right? Don't get me wrong. But for the most part, it's a trend of what happens in our life. So they took and they drew a line down the middle of it. You have, you can't make it perfect, all right? Here you've got 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you got 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, but it's an approximate, and you use your ruler to draw a trend line, and then you make a prediction that is off the graph, okay? So let's look at over here. Let's try these, all right? Coaching salaries, and don't take this as this is what people make here, all right? And years of experience, because I don't know what year this is. I don't know if they're representing these in hundreds of thousands or, I don't know what team this is, but anybody coach that makes $500 and has 5 years of experience, they need to renegotiate that contract. So let's look at this. I've got salaries on this side, and I've got years of experience. If you're looking at this data, it looks relatively as if it's going up. And this is where it's very hard to draw these trend lines, and I want you to know that from the start. I understand that it's very hard, so you're going to do your best effort, all right? And I am going to try and draw a trend line that is approximately in the middle of the data. Now, everybody's is going to be just probably a little different. I'm looking at, I want to kind of go right in here, okay? And so I'm going to try and take my ruler, connect some points, make sure that I'm doing the best I can at being in the middle, and I'm going to draw a trend line, okay? So there's my trend line, all right? So here I know that salaries are increasing as years of experience are increasing. And I would suggest you do that on your graph, because when you do that, then you're able to say that, all right? Because these are the types of questions that might be asked, all right? First, what kind of correlation do you see in this scatter plot? Well, I see it going up, and I'm probably a little high. Probably should have come in where I covered a little bit more of this, all right? So, but I see a positive, and I almost see linear. Now, there's some things out there I know that doesn't make it completely linear. If I probably did a little better job here, I'd probably get this a little bit more that way, all right? Then it says draw the trend line. Use the trend line to determine how much an incoming coach with 10 years of coaching experience should make. So I go to where 10 years of experience is, and I'm going to go right up to here, okay? And I'm going to come over here, and I get, at 10 years, my trend line tells me it's about, I don't know, it's between 2,000 and 25, but it's closer to 2,000. So I probably would say about $2,000. This obviously would, for the most part, is multiple choice questions, and so you're going to pick the one that's closest. Now, sometimes there's a couple that are real close, but you have to just do your best, okay? That's all I can ask, is that you try your best, all right? So then it says, use the trend line to determine how much a coach should make when he has accumulated 20 years of coaching experience. So you have to go all the way over here, and do you notice there's no dots or anything to really use? And that's why we have to learn to draw this trend line. And so I would go to 20, and I'd go up to my line, and so look at that. It's a little more than what? $3,000? So about or near $3,000, okay? And that's about the best we can do. I cannot make a perfect prediction, but according to whoever's out there, I should be able to draw a trend line and get that approximate, all right? Let's look at the next one. Isles Royale population. Like I said, it's really important for you to read your graphs. We have moose, okay? Them mooses out there. And we've got wolves, all right? It says draw a trend line. Now, what do I see here? I see my data going down. So I see that the wolves are increasing, aren't they? And the moose are decreasing, so I'm going to do one of these. So as my wolves population, because they're talking about population, increases, my moose's population decreases, okay? So what kind of correlation do you see in this scatter plot? Well, I see a line going down, so I see a negative correlation, all right? And it said to draw my trend line, so I'm going to, again, try and get about in the middle, and I need you guys to practice this while I'm doing it with you. It's not going to be a perfect fit, okay? You're not going to get it exactly like me. I mean, we hope that it's close, but is that really going to happen every time? Probably not. And like I said, I'm just trying to get it as close as I can get, and I would draw off the graph like I did so that you get a clear picture, because sometimes they ask you for something way out here, okay? So it says, use the trend line to determine how many moose would remain if there were only 4 wolves, okay? So I'm looking at this, and well, I don't see the number 4 for wolves, but I know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here is 4. So there's where 4 wolves would be. So I can go up, and I can come over, and so it looks here to me as if there's about or over 500. And it's almost halfway between 500 and 600, so I'm even going to write 550, okay? Please pause this if you need to, and draw your lines and do the practice with me, because otherwise, what's going to happen when you get to the practice and you have to do it all by yourself, all right? Next, use the trend line to determine how many wolves would essentially wipe out the moose population. Well, let's see. The moose population. So we're talking about what's over here, and I need it to be at 0, because that means there's no moose at all when it wipes them out. So let's say somewhere right in here, right? And so about how many wolves do I need? Well, it looks like 25, 26, 27. So somewhere between 26 or 27. So I would say about 26 or 27. Now they're going to give you multiple choice answers, so you're just going to be able to give them that answer, okay? So I know it's a lot to take in, and I know that there's a lot of things. Remember this, if they tell you some kind of crazy thing, like if they give you a multiple choice question and you have not heard that term, because a lot of times you'll hear some things like multiple correlations, that's not a term. I've never used that. We don't have that. It's either positive, negative, or no. Okay? Positive, negative, or no correlation. All right? We have a short practice today. I know that it is going to involve you drawing trend lines. You're going to need to read everything. I would make your arrows on your graphs so that you can verbally and acknowledge what's happening on your graphs, and then you're going to answer your questions. And I would suggest maybe that you check with your person sitting next to you and ask them if they kind of got the same thing that you did, so that you can get practice, okay? And then we will practice a different type of practice tomorrow.